Hello and welcome to another episode of Things That Spark Joy. So in this episode I'm going to be looking at 5 programming books that spark joy. Slightly off camera you can see a pile I've got here. There's going to be a couple of other books that feature in the stories. I suppose you could think of them as honourable mentions or tie-ins to some of the books I'm talking about. I've got a lot more than 5 books that spark joy with reference to programming, but I just picked 5 that really bring back vivid memories of certain points when I was learning certain programming languages to mainly solve or achieve certain objectives. And at some point in the future, what I should do, I think, is probably do a tour of my technology and information management bookshelf. That would be super interesting. But for the moment, I've just picked 5 books off of that bookshelf that spark joy in one way or another. So I'm going to start off with this book, Computer Programming in Basic by L.R. Carter and E. Husen. So I learnt Basic at school in the 70s, and I don't remember having a textbook to learn from. We were taught it in a classroom environment. We were taught it by doing, initially by sending data sheets actually off to a mainframe, and then subsequently, after the first year of the course, it was a 2-year course I did between 14 and 16. But subsequently, we had access to a couple of Commodore PETs the second year that I did programming. And so that I was able to up my game. Now, between when I left school and when I had to program again as part of a project I was involved with, when I worked in a lab where I was involved in computerizing quality control procedures and testing and also document preparation. I'd been lucky enough to do a number of science courses, a 2-year ONC and a 2-year HNC, which were sponsored by my workplace, where we actually had to not learn basic but do basic again, so it acted as a refresher. During that time leading into when I actually had to do some programming at work, I purchased this just to try and bring together all of my sort of knowledge and to basically just practice again what I'd learnt. And so this was an excellent book at the time, I found, for sort of refreshing certain concepts maybe I'd lost, and particularly lots of useful programs where it was printing to the screen or printing to a printer or printing to what they call here a disk unit. So this was very useful, and just flicking back through this reminds me of the first programming language that I learnt and the number of years I spent just dabbling and programming, doing various programs to solve problems at work. So that's my first choice. I'm just trying to look here. When did this come out? 1981. So I started work in 81. This is a 87 reprint. So that would be right, because I left school in 81, did 4 years while I was working at college, so that brought me up to 85, and then it was a couple of years after that when I started having to program at work. So around 87, 88 actually. May even be a little bit later than that. Anyway, that's the first choice. So then, when I changed jobs, I managed to get access to Visual Basic, and this was the first time so all the programming I did around the time, but this was obviously this would have been around the time of MS-DOS. We weren't using Windows 3.1, although it was probably close to coming in at that point. We were using, actually we had Amstrad, so we were using, was it the GEM? I think it was the GEM GUI that came with the Amstrads. But yeah, this was very much done in GW Basic, which shipped with Basic. But I was interested in transitioning over to learning how to program in Windows. And I had the opportunity at work, in another workplace that I went on to work at when I changed jobs, to learn Visual Basic. Now, it wasn't to solve a particular problem at work. Most of the times I was solving problems at work, it was more in database systems. I'm trying to think off the top of my head now actually what I was doing it in, but I know one was Access, and I can't remember the other system. But for fun, I went through, and a lot of the identification programs that I'd created in GW Basic and Q Basic, I, as a self-development project, decided I would convert some bacterial identification programs from GW Basic into Visual Basic. And the cool thing about this is, obviously I learned all about events and those sort of things, and obviously how to design in the this sort of GUI design tool that comes with Visual Basic. And so this book that I bought at the time was of great help. And this does certainly bring back memories of working in the Visual Basic environment, even down to the point where I was designing icons for the toolbars, which was pretty fun. But yeah, this was super useful for that. Obviously, the Q books generally were my sort of, I suppose, my go-to books at the time. Now, around the time that I was dabbling around at home in Visual Basic, I also had previously been, I was starting to do a postgrad in computing and manufacturing. And on the postgraduate, we had to learn object-oriented programming. We had to learn Smalltalk. Now, I couldn't really use that to develop anything at work. Smalltalk's a great way of learning object-oriented programming because it really locks you in. But I didn't really feel that any of the stuff that I'd learned using Smalltalk, although I could use it to then go on and learn other object-oriented programming, there was nothing there really that made it easy for me to produce executables to run at the command line for work. And so I took it upon myself to learn C++ using this book, because I wanted to write some programs to run at the command line which would do very simple financial calculations. We were using Excel, but a number of the Excel spreadsheets that had been produced by head office were very clunky and actually had errors in them, and it was really difficult to get them to modify them. So I just wrote a very simple program in C++ to do a couple of different financial calculations, things like early termination and things for rental agreements, because the company I was working for at that time was a rental company, and often as part of our support for the tills, we had to advise showrooms on what would happen if a renter decided that they wanted to finish their rental agreement earlier. And so I basically wrote a command line program for that. At the same time I bought this book, I couldn't resist purchasing this. So both of these are classics, and definitely when I flip through these really do make me smile and bring joy. And the nice thing about learning about this was it was the first time that I really had to understand about pointers and memory management, and how things could go spectacularly wrong as well. So this is my book that sparks joy for this episode, but this is my sort of honourable mention around that time. So moving on to this book. So between when I was working on electronic point of sale and account support, and when I ended up working for myself as a sort of computer troubleshooter and trainer and teacher, I went and did some development work for a firm. It was accounting development. Unfortunately, I don't have any books from that time, because everything we did on a platform called Concord XAL, we either learned through going to IBM sponsored courses to get accreditation, or through the documentation that came with the software. So I don't have anything from there, but subsequently, once I went and worked for myself, I decided to do a course in web applications development, because I felt that it'd be really useful when I was advising clients. I didn't have any desire to really do a lot of web programming myself, although I ended up doing some and also teaching web development. But I thought it'd be really useful to have a really informed, what's the word I'm looking for here, but have the knowledge to be able to spot for clients when they were being bullshitted. And so I did a course over about 3 years with the Open University, 2 courses a year. And during that period, we covered HTML, JavaScript, CSS, Active Servers Pages, MySQL, Cold Fusion, Apache servers, PHP, those sort of things. And this book reminds me very much of that time. I can remember sitting in my car between visiting clients, pouring through this book with my laptop in the car and basically coding, because this was the course booklet, or part of the course book. I think there was only one for the JavaScript component, which was this book, and it came with the course when you paid for the course and all the materials came out to you. Quite a bit of the course was delivered online, but for each course we had a book. This was one for JavaScript, and it was the first book that introduced me to these visual visual quick start guides, and I bought a few others actually outside of the course. But I really liked the way these were laid out with the highlighted text to show you exactly what they were talking about. And for the project that we had to do for the course, we had to build part of a shopping cart system. That had all sorts of things like rollovers and various other stuff on it. And this just reminds me of sitting in my car, because of course I had to use every spare moment possible to try and fit in doing a certificate in web application development alongside my job as a teacher, trainer and troubleshooter out on the road. And then finally, and I did a few episodes of a series on this, but I sort of lost interest a little bit. It wasn't really that well viewed. This is currently my favourite book. This is a fantastic book. If you want to learn Rust, this is the one I can highly recommend. It really walks through the programming language in a really logical fashion, and does the job really well. And for those parts of Rust that I did teach myself, it was thoroughly enjoyable using this book. The nice thing about this book is it's available for free to view online via the Rust website, so you don't even have to buy the book. I just bought the book because I love books. And so this is another book that really sparks joy, and it is ongoing to some degree. I'm going to dip back into this next year in 2023, although I don't know whether I'll pick up the episodes on learning Rust, simply because the response wasn't that great. So, and it was a lot of work in putting the episodes together. So yeah, it's on hold for the moment, but certainly I'm going to pick this book up where I left off and sort of carry on teaching myself Rust. One other, I suppose you could call honourable mention, and really helped facilitate my interest in learning multiple languages, is this book. I think I've mentioned it before actually. It's quite an old book now, but it's a great book for getting a bit about the history of some of the older languages, and it sort of compare and contrasts different types of languages, how different aspects of language is achieved in different languages, different aspects of programming, and each of the chapters sort of covers a different area, if you like, and a lot of them will show different programming languages alongside one another. It's designed for courses, so it has exercises you can do. It has a really useful bibliography. I'm trying to remember the time frame when I bought it, so it would have been possibly when I was working for myself, maybe, so sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was through this book I acquired a lot of my other programming books that I'm not showing currently, but I will show when I do a tour of my programming and management, information management bookshelf. But it helped me track down a lot of books. Like I've got things like I think the original BCPL book, and an APL book, and a few other things as well. I think a book on Lisp. I think I've got a copy of the original Lisp programming manual, and also various books on Prolog and Fortran and things like that. So yeah, very useful for that because of these very handy bibliographies at the end. So thanks once again for watching. Hope that was interesting to watch. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.